Killian docket. See that's all the bills, except for Delegate Bell's bill and Delegate Hugo's bill. Everything else we will hear Tuesday after 4, at least as far as we are. So that's the plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate O'Bannon. We had 4 matters that were before the committee on Tuesday, and we're going by for the day pending further consideration and confirmation of the letter that they needed to be heard in appropriation. We will first take up House Bill 1467. The matter was heard. We have received confirmation it would need to go to appropriations. We had a thorough hearing on the matter Tuesday. So without objection, committee members, what is your pleasure? If you embrace the policy, the motion should be that you would report and refer to appropriations. Moved properly seconded that we report and refer House Bill 1467. Before the committee takes final action, is there anyone in the audience who has new information to share with us that was not available to be here last Tuesday? If not, committee members record your vote on the motion to report and refer to appropriations. Have all members voted to care to be recorded? Edmund, Tope, James, Levine, members of the president to vote now. Okay, then the bill is reported and referred to appropriations 18-0. Next, we have House Bill 1549, Delegate Farrell. Delegate Farrell, are we ready for that to go forward to appropriations?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
The matter was heard on Tuesday. The motion would need to be reported and refer. Do you hear a motion to that effect? Second. Move properly seconded. We'll report and refer 1549. If an audience be heard that was not able to be here Tuesday, then members record your vote on the motion to report and refer. Have all members voted to care to be recorded? Delegate Peace doesn't want to see it upstairs, but otherwise the rest of you do. The bill is reported and referred 17-1.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
and if it's coming up another day, that's fine, but 1551 was also, it's not on the docket, but we passed it by for today as well.
That should be on full committee docket Tuesday.
Sounds good, thank you, sir.
Okay. House Bill 1568, Chairman's Bill, Child Care Providers, Fingerprint Background Check. We heard that pretty extensively on Tuesday. Committee members, what is your pleasure? It's been moved to report and refer to appropriations 1568. Is there any in the audience to be heard on the matter before the committee takes action on the motion to report and refer? No discussion on the committee. Members record your vote on the motion to report and refer to appropriations. All members voted to care to be recorded. The bill is reported and referred to appropriations 13-5. And finally, Delegate Hodges, House Bill 1775. That matter was held over just because there were some questions about its unintended implications. I presume they've been resolved. This one doesn't have a letter. So if you like the policy, the motion should be to report House Bill 1775. What is your pleasure? Obviously, we don't like it today like we did Tuesday. Okay. It's been moved and properly seconded to report House Bill 1775. Anyone in the audience to be heard on the matter before we take action or further questions from the committee? If not, members record your vote on the board to report. The bill is reported 19-0. Then, going to our electronic queue sign-up. Sorry to keep you all waiting. Delegate Cox, you're first on our list, House Bill 1846. Committee members, please give your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 1846, as the Chairman says, the bill I have in front of you today. This comes at the request of the Virginia Funeral Directors Association. It's pretty simple. Under current law, a death certificate has to be filed basically. It authorizes a death certificate to be filed in any registration district in the Commonwealth. Under current law, death certificates are required to be filed in the district in which the death occurs. So here's the problem. We have 2 veterans care centers right now, one in Salem and one in Cedar Barfoot and Richmond. So if the funeral home's in Winchester, obviously, and that relative dies at Cedar Barfoot, then that funeral director or that next of kin has to come all the way down and file especially in rural areas, it's become a rural problem. So basically, the change is simply that you can file the death certificate with death occurs. And there's an amendment that, Mr. Chairman, that I think clarifying amendment that council might have. And basically, I think this comes from Department of Health. And it would basically, page 1, line 13, after A, insert non-electronically filed. It's clarifying, I think currently if you electronically file, now it goes straight to public records. I think it's just clarifying.
If there's no objection to the proposed amendment, will adopt it by general consensus. Patron's requested amendment is adopted. Committee members, any questions of the patron on the matter before us? Anyone in the audience to be heard on the matter either in support or opposition to House Bill 1846? Members, what is your pleasure? Moved properly seconded that we report House Bill 1846 as amended. There's no further discussion. Members, record your vote on the board on the motion to report as amended. Has everyone voted who cares to be recorded? The bill is reported 19 to nothing. Thank you, Delegate Cox. Delegate Rasul. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Bill 2153 or 56? What is your matter?
2153.
Right.
HB 2153 allows for DNRs which are executed in another state to be recognized here in the Commonwealth. So we're allowing for reciprocity to ensure that the end-of-life wishes of an individual is recognized here. This bill has, we've talked with VHHA, MSV, VHCA, of course, Dr. O'Bannon, and all seem to be okay with the bill.
Obviously, he has become your designated spokesperson. That may have not been a good one. We'll just see. Any members have any questions on House Bill 2153? It's pretty straightforward. Anyone in the audience to be heard in support or opposition to the matter before us?
Move to report.
Been moved properly seconded that we would report 2153. There's no further discussion. Members, record your vote on the board on the motion to report without amendment. And the bill is reported 19 to nothing. Roll is closed, and we're going to let 2156 go by for the day because you can't give it one in a day.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman. All righty, then we have Dolly Watts. I think you were next. Members, give your attention to, which do you care, 1777 or 18, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line, 2072. Dolly Watts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The reason for the handout is just to be absolutely clear that what 2072 does, down at the bottom of page 2, is insert the exact language that appears in the federal regulations as to the responsibility of a nursing home as far as family councils are concerned. Our current code makes it clear that certain family members are notified by the nursing home upon joint agreement between the nursing home administration and the family council. But in addition to that, public notice of all meetings and information must also be posted in the nursing home. So this clarifies that public notice means that anyone in the public, including family members, could attend these meetings. And again, this is the exact language from the federal code, from the federal regulations.
Dolly Watts, for those who maybe aren't that familiar, could you tell us what a family council is in this context?
A family council, as I have experienced it with in my district, is a meeting chaired by and I'm not sure how they select it, but it is all spelled out in part of what you see under 16. regulation of the nursing home comes at invite, but the federal regs also say that you are to communicate with each other and listen to what the family council brings forward. It's described in federal regs as being having a dual purpose of clearinghouse for the family members as well as mutual support. So it really varies depending upon who participates and exactly what the circumstances are of the facility.
And this is 100% the residents and their families initiated type of group.
That's right. And if they've initiated it, then the nursing facility must facilitate their meetings within the home.
Delegate Garrett, question or comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Delegate Watson. So it looks like this federal regulation has been in place since 2014. It strikes me the only reason to, out of an abundance of caution, just duplicate literally what's already in federal regulations that every citizen of the Commonwealth still already has an obligation to abide by into our code, and thereby potentially in some people's minds clutter the code. Is there an issue or a specific thing that people have been in disobeyance of the federal law that in your mind by somehow codified in state law, out of an abundance of caution, we could have prevented some catastrophe or something happening?
I wouldn't use the word catastrophe, then this is an instrument. But
Some
yes,
malfeasance.
there are two reasons. One, you see the level of detail in subsection 16, whereas others are far more just generic. This gives detail, so with that detail, without also mirroring that public notice means that any family member may attend. There has been some confusion in a nursing home that I have represented for a significant portion of time. So this is just one clarification in the code as to whether or not there is a separate issue in the case that brought this forward to me, and that separate issue is whether or not a guardian working with the court could prohibit a specific family member, just as you have control over visitation, whether that would also apply to participating in the family council. That's a separate issue that whether or not a court through a guardian could so limit. But as far as the nursing home is concerned, they could not on their own limit.
Mr.
Further
Chairman,
question?
Mr. Sullivan, I hate to belabor it, but I perhaps inartfully asked my question. Is there a specific issue that this is a problem? If literally all we're doing, otherwise, is cutting a piece of federal code out and putting it in the state code, and there's not a specific entity or issue that's going to fix. I mean, it just strikes me we are being somewhat redundant.
My apologies, Delegate Garrett. I tried to refer to a specific incident, and that specific incident is an issue where family members have not been able, have been told they cannot participate in the family council. And again, if in fact the court, through a guardian, could so enforce, that becomes a separate issue. But as far as, with absent that being decided, this clarifies that public notice means, as it is in the code, as it is in federal regulation, that all family members shall be able to participate. And this clarifies that as I have tried to deal with this issue.
Thank you.
Delegate Hitt, question or comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just also in further clarification on that, I see in the federal code, this is from CMS, so that would cover anybody that is in a nursing home that's being paid for by Medicare or Medicaid. It looks to me like this section of the code in the Virginia code would cover all nursing homes, whether it's private pay or public monies. Is that, am I reading that right, or is there no clouded issue there?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Head, I think is over my pay grade. I have not been on HWI for a long time, and I honestly do not know the answer to that.
Delegate Hitt, was there a question where you want this matter to go 5 for the day? Or
No, it was just clarification, really to Delegate Garrett's question as to why we might need to go ahead and do this in the state code. That might be a reason that it would cover everything and not just
Ms. Daniels,
public good.
information you can bring to bear.
Yes, when you look at this, in subdivision 16, it will apply to each nursing home and certified nursing facility in the Commonwealth.
And Sarah, but is the question to the point, federal rates only apply to federal funds that flow down, I suspect? Okay, so this is having us go somewhat beyond federal requirements.
But, and yet I would bring to
And
attention
Dr.
of the
Watson.
committee that the vast majority of the people in nursing homes are on Medicaid.
And would it not also create a circumstance whereby if one of these family councils form, and any members of the council were receiving federal funds, then you kind of have to have the policy open for any and all residents and their families who want to be a part of the same, would have to be afforded the same opportunity, correct?
And,
It's meant to be a health.
correct, and I think that is the intent of our legislation for public use.
Any further questions or comments from committee members? Anyone in the audience to be heard on House Bill 2072 before the committee takes action? Committee members, what is your pleasure? Moved properly seconded to report House Bill 2072 without amendment. There's no further discussion on the matter. Committee members, record your vote on the board. Motion to report. All members recorded. Their vote care to be reported. Matter is reported 21 to nothing. Good morning. Thank you again, Delegate Watson. Delegate Boulevard. House Bill 1675.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 1675 is a unanimous recommendation of the Joint Commission on Healthcare, which I had the privilege of being able to serve on with a number of members of this committee. I'll profess that up until this last summer, I had only a real fleeting understanding of what palliative care was and why it was important. And thanks to Delegate Fillerhorn, we on the Joint Commission on Healthcare had a chance to study that issue in depth. I think what became abundantly clear as a result of those conversations is that there's a lot of confusion that palliative care is still the same thing as hospice care. Hospice care is end-of-life care, whereas palliative care is much more comprehensive. It's a team approach, deals with everything from the beginning of the disease to the end of the disease. As a result, a lot of people don't take advantage of what palliative care has to offer. I will tell you, the beauty of the Joint Health Care Commission is that it is very research and scientifically based, and so there's been a lot of great studies out there.
Delegate Boulevard, I know you planned this well.
You want me to
I
stop?
don't know of any opposition, except maybe me and not opposition to the policy. My concern, typically, from my experience, when we're having the department a requirement they have to do something, especially as it relates to their website, we do it as a Section 1 bill, rather than writing it into the code. And especially as it stands before us with such specificity, it should be on this website. We especially don't write that in the code, because then you come back in a few years because we've got to add something, take something out, whatever. Would the patron be adverse if we were to adopt an amendment nature of substitute embodying all of the current language, but rather as a Section 1 bill that would then direct the department to make the information available and just not put it in the code book? It would have the same effect on the department and the same effect, I would suggest, to the public knowledge of the information, and not add another line to the code book.
Mr. Chairman, this is the way that the Joint Commission drafted it up, but it has the same effect. I'm looking at members who sit on the Joint Commission with me, and they're nodding yes, and so I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
That's be easy enough to just turn this into a Section 1 bill. So the motion has been made properly seconded that we would adopt an amendment nature of substitute that would make this a Section 1 bill embodying all the same language as a directive to the department. Without objection, we'll adopt that amendment nature of substitute. Okay. Are there questions from the committee members or anyone in the audience to be heard on House Bill 1675 before the committee takes action? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Ann Vaughn with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. We very much support this bill and appreciate the Joint Commission taking a look at this issue.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments or questions? Been moved properly seconded that we report House Bill 1675 as amended. There's no further discussion. Members, record your vote on the board on the motion to report as amended. All members members voted, carried to be reported. The bill is reported 21-0. Thank you, Mr. Finley. Appreciate it.
And I was just getting to the good part.
I know. Come by and see us individually, I'll share that. Alrighty, then do we have committee members who have matters pending before us? Let's start down the list, what we haven't gotten to. Delegate, that's been done, never mind. Delegate Hope, I believe you have House Bill 1642, and you may present from down front or where you sit, but you're not sitting, so you're going down front. Okay. So, committee members, give your attention to House Bill 1642, and as the patrons coming forward, you'll notice this is a naloxone bill, but it was not sent to subcommittee because all this matter does is allow the Department of Forensic Science to have this med within their custody.
Yes, and there's a line in this.
Okay. Sarah, you have language.
Yep. Line amendment, page 4, line 228. After Chief Medical Examiner, comma, insert employees of the Department of General Services Division of Consolidated Laboratory Services, comma.
So that's just increasing the folks who can possess it.
Without objection, without that amendment, well, the amendment is properly adopted. Okay. Yes, sir, Delegate Hope, anything further to explain?
No, there's an emergency clause that everyone should be aware of because of the danger of, I have a, where are you from?
Yes, ma'am, please.
I'm Linda Jackson, the Director of the Department of Forensic Science, and this is an agency bill to be able to provide a safety measure for our employees with these dangerous opioids.
I thank you. Questions of the patron? Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir.
I mean nothing but of harm. So my dad was a medical examiner in our community as well. And as a medical examiner, he went to, the hospital to examine bodies. And why would he need naloxone?
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate O'Bannon?
I don't want to speak for the DFS people, but I think one of the concerns is that the powders that they're now getting also have carfentanil and other very strong things in them. So the risk of contamination may be a little more now. And so when they're working with these things, just having this there makes good sense.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up then, it's actually for their safety, not for their capacity to be able to administer it to some other person. It's actually for their own.
There's a chief medical examiner who's like here.
I think we got it. Thank you.
It's been moved properly seconded that we report as amended House Bill 1642. Anyone else in the audience be heard on the matter? For the questions from the committee, if not, members record your vote on the motion to report as amended. All members voted to carry to be reported. Delegate Ayers. Bill is reported 21-0. All righty. Delegate Hodges. House Bill 1775. Oh, done it, never mind. Delegate Stolle, 1777, we've done. The Delegate Stolle, House Bill 1840.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1840 simply removes some of the Christmas tree items in the bill dealing with the confidentiality of tests of HIV and the release of that information. Back in the late 80s, when there was a significant stigma attached to HIV, we put in certain protections within the code. Since that time, we've passed protections for all citizens, including HIPAA and high tech. And so with those passages of federal law, a lot of this information became redundant. In fact, it actually is a bit of a barrier to protection of these folks with electronic medical records and excluding these from electronic medical records. These changes just brings the code up to current modern standards.
Any questions of the patron on House Bill 1840? Anyone in the audience to be heard on the matter? Many members, what is your pleasure?
Second.
Move properly second to report House Bill 1840 as presented. If there's no further discussion, members record your vote on the board on the motion to report. The matter is reported 20-0. Thank you, Delegate Staley. Next, Delegate Rob Bell, 1922.
Let's go back to the day.
Five for the day, not a problem. Okay? Delegate Peace, House Bill 1942 or 46, whichever you care to do first.
House Bill 1946.
All right?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, proposed legislation would amend the code to align with new federal regulations governing the Office of Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, which took effect July 1st, 2016. Really is a housekeeping measure that deals with a couple key federal requirements. Number one, clarifying information regarding responsibilities of the Office of Ombudsman for decisions related to release of confidential records and files, and providing for the imposition of certain sanctions for interference with those duties in the performance of the Ombudsman's responsibilities. And that is laid out in the lines 45 through 50, primarily new subsection B that's created in the bill. I'm not aware of any opposition to the legislation. I ask that you support the bill.
Any questions of the patron on House Bill 1946? Anyone in the audience to be heard on the matter? Moved properly seconded to report House Bill 1946. No further discussion. Members of the court, you vote on the board on the motion to report. The matter is reported 20-0. Did you care to take up your other bill this morning?
Yes.
Okay, 42, 1942.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 1942. As the members of this committee will recall, after several years, the legislature adopted the Fostering Futures program for extending foster care for youths 18 to 21. This legislation is designed to eliminate any confusion regarding requirements for certain background checks, as youth in the program are considered foster care children, although they are over the age of 18. And so this makes it clear that those who are over the age of 18 will be subject to background checks as adults, and that the department would use that information as it may place other children in a foster home. And so this legislation is designed to make it clear that there is a requirement for background checks of foster children, although they are not technically children by legal standards, 18 to 21 years old. If that makes sense, Your Honor. Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
Question?
Motion has been, but anyway. Any questions of the patron on House Bill 1942?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Delegate Peace, is the intent to actually do the background check on the individual that's now, the child himself, rather than the foster families or foster environment?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Delegate Garrett, when placing any child, they're going to be doing the due diligence. This is placing the background check on the adult, 18 to 21-year-old, who happens to be in the Fostering Futures program, but is deemed a foster child for purposes of that program. Thank you.
Any further questions of the patron? Anyone in the audience to be heard on House Bill 1942? Yes, please use your request to speak button. I'm really dependent on that. So yes,
My question is, would this apply to someone who has been in foster care, a child, for his whole life, then would have to have a background check after he turns 18?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Pogge, this is related to those individuals who are in foster care who are aging out, who remain in the program, and that was the whole intent of extending it from 18 to 21 to provide certain educational supports, certain housing supports, all with the requirements that there's mentors provided, there's certain expectations to maintain employment. There's a lot of conditions placed on these youths, although they are no longer children, they are deemed to be children for purposes of that program.
any further questions? Will the audience be heard on the matter? Committee members, what is your pleasure? Been properly seconded. Report House Bill 1942. Members of the court to vote on the board on the motion to report. The matter is reported 20-0. Delegate Robinson. And as she's coming forward, I just say we have Delegate O'Bannon and then Delegate Price. If she has not returned, we'll just have to take her spot for a day. Okay, but I'm just saying. Okay.
Chairman.
Morning, Roxanne.
Good morning. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what House Bill 2020-2207 will do, it will require the Department of Social Services to monitor requests for replacement EBT cards for the food stamp program. The council makes 4 requests for replacement cards within a 12-month period. Then the department shall give written notice that the account is being monitored for suspicious activity, and that any additional request for a replacement EBT card will require contact with the department and an explanation before the replacement card can be issued.
And the long and the short of this, and I'm correct, Ella Robinson, nobody's going to be denied replacement of these cards. It just creates a mechanism whereby if they keep losing these suckers, we need to talk.
Correct. That's what it amounts to.
And it forces that within the department, within the family. So,
And this was one of the bills from the caucus and on the Medicaid reform against, for fraud.
because we want to make sure, one, nobody's being denied services.
Correct.
Two, also want to try and put in place a mechanism whereby we're not de facto supporting the loss of these and being used alternatively, shall we say. Delegate Ayers, question or comment?
Yes, I just had a quick question, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to be clear, in reading the language, it talked about the process, and after a particular number of requests, that investigation of the household would occur. So I just wanted to be clear that there wouldn't be any unintentional investigations occurring as it relates to this bill.
As far as I know, that it's totally on the EBT card and that, the process of them losing them. There's a couple states that have already implemented this, and once it was implemented, North Carolina, they had 90% of the enrollees with excessive replacement cards, and after this was put in place in North Carolina, it went to like 10%. And in Wisconsin, it was the same thing, a huge drop. So it allows the family members who should be using the card to be using the card.
Follow-up question?
Yes, Delegate Ayers.
I also wanted to be clear about, it also indicates in the language that once you have made a 4th request for the card, you will then be subject to monitoring activity on that card. Who uses the discretion to determine what type of activity is then rendered suspicious?
Maybe that maybe someone from the department come forward.
Yeah,
as
they
they
probably
do.
get qualified as far as.
Thank you.
I believe y'all have a consistent process of monitoring for potential illegal
Chairman,
activity.
Tom Stein, Department of Social Services. We currently monitor after 4 EBT cards are issued. We send them a letter notifying them that they don't need to keep requesting new cards, that you can use your card over. After 8, we investigate, we go into the electronic system, look for questionable transactions, transactions that occur late at night, even dollar transactions. And so we currently have a process in place.
And Tom, this is the long and short of the effect of this, is we're just moving that intervention earlier in the process before they've been replaced quite as many times, and creating a more specific instrument of how to handle that and the education component, things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
So it's moving it forward, but it's also providing a little more support to the family if they need more education and how to properly utilize them and not lose them.
And actually, after the 8 cards are issued, we do an investigation about 15 cards a month, 15 cases a month, and actually about only 2 are referred for local investigation of fraud.
Further questions?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Loading up here. Delegate Hogue.
Mr. Chairman, I think you just answered my question. My question was how big of a problem is this? How is this a monthly basis? Does it cost more money to?
We send out about 400 letters a month to individuals who have requested 4 EBT cards. After 8, there's about 15 investigations, and actually 2 get referred to local Department of Social Services for investigation.
Thank you. But, and Tom, as a follow-up while you're there, but I'm here again, isn't it just, we're just moving it to an earlier stage so that we kind of end up at the same place, but we try and intervene a little earlier, so any potential for abuse would be even further.
Correct, they're both start at 4 replacement cards.
But right now, it's 8 before y'all do the investigation. This would move that a little earlier in the process after the 5th.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Delegate Hope. Oh, my bad. Delegate Levine.
quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question about when you lose a card, as I understand the process, but correct me if I'm wrong, you don't get any more money on the card. In other words, the card is like, it's not like a card that you use in a store where you get sort of more money with each card. In other words, the card is just like a credit card. There's a set account. So if you're trying to commit fraud with these cards and someone else gets your card, you still don't get any more money from the state. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
So,
But if I may just to follow up, what isn't the problem, we're trying to get at the fact that, yes, they're not getting any money more from the state, but that money may be now being utilized by someone other than the intended person to whom it was given. That they may be selling it.
That's the indicator. If there's a lot of late night transactions or a lot of even dollar transactions, could be an indicator of traffic.
Further questions?
follow-up, Mr. Chairman. So if someone is losing their card and they need a new one, are they informed as to what transactions took place while their card was missing?
Once they notify the department or our EBT vendor, they will what we call status the card, so it kind of puts it out of commission. It does definitely put it out of commission, so it can't be used after that point.
Mr. Chairman, if I...
Yes, sir.
I believe my question was, is the person who said they lost the card notified, hey, while your card was not in your possession, these 3 charges were made against it?
Next time they make a transaction, on their receipt, we'll show them their balance, so if their balance is different from the other one, they would know it that way.
So follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Is there any attempt made to go after the supposedly unauthorized charges? If I lose my credit card and someone is charging it in somewhere else, we may try to find out who it was. Does this happen from the department's perspective? Is there any attempt to find out what happened with these other charges?
He's using one of his lifelines here, phone a friend.
I guess the answer to that question is no.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Tom, while you're there, but at the end of the day, while on the one hand, this is intended to make sure that if there's fraudulent activity, we're going to try and catch it a little sooner in the process, but isn't the flip side of this, that if they have truly lost the card and somebody is using it without their knowledge, this would make the department aware, and they could then make the client aware similarly, that yes, it's being used by someone other than the intended recipient, so that y'all can intervene for them a little more quickly, whether it's a new card number, as it were, issued so that the other one gets deactivated, and no more activity can occur on that lost card, taking the money away from the individual that's entitled to it.
Each card has a pin on it. You can pin the card, so if you get the card, it's no good unless the individual is giving you the pin also. So what this bill is really looking for is trafficking. Somebody who's selling their benefits for 50 cents on the
I
dollar.
was trying to make it better than it was. All right. Any other questions on the matter? Anyone in the audience be heard on House Bill 2207 before the committee takes action? Doug Levine, you have another question?
Speaking to the bill very quickly, it seems to me, and I may not understand it, I'm happy to talk to the sponsor after, but it seems to me that this isn't helping the person who might lose a card by telling them where it's going or who else is using it. They can lose benefits and they don't really know where it's going. So I see it as a bill that isn't really helping the problem. Is that because you're already checking if there's more than 4 excessive transactions and you're not helping the person that lost the card. So I'm skeptical of the bill, at least right now, but I'm able to be convinced, but I just want to speak to the bill on that. Thank you.
Right. Any further discussion or questions? What is your pleasure? I believe that I heard the motion to report in second. There's no further discussion or public comment. Members, record your vote on the board on the motion to report. Dr. O'Bannon in the room, he's asking me to press his button. Doc, it's not working any better for me than you, but there we go. Okay, if all members voted or in the room, care to be recorded. The matter is reported 16-4. Dr. O'Bannon, 2301.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not a Commonwealth Rise or Fall type of bill. This bill basically takes out the words direct supervision on, or direct and immediate supervision on allowing licensed practical nurses to give immunizations. And I think pharmacists are doing this. It's consistent, I think, with our effort to make the most use of all of our providers. It will help in situations where their LPNs will be working in nursing homes and other settings.
And LPNs is well within their current scope of practice. It just makes clear that they can do it for vaccines as well.
Yes, sir.
Any questions of the patron on House Bill 2301? Anyone in the audience to be heard on the matter before the committee takes action? Been moved properly seconded to report House Bill 2301. Members record your vote on the board on the motion to report. All members voted declare to be recorded. The matter is reported 19 to nothing. Dr. Van, 2307.
Thank you very much. 2317.
2317, I'm sorry.
I'm going to ask Dr. Forlano to join me. Dr. Forlano is your state epidemiologist. This bill is part of the ongoing effort to try to get at the issues that revolve around people getting hepatitis and HIV from illegal drug use. And the bill basically, and it's a page, and I'm glad to go through it, but it clearly defines the process where this would happen. And I'll let Dr. Forlano speak to it if you want, but this is tightly drawn to allow the department to, not statewide, not universal, but clearly defined areas where it is a proven public health safety measure could be utilized. It's got the right safeguards in it. And I'll let her explain it if you'd like, but hopefully we'll be able to.
And long term, this is just giving the department another tool in the chest, as it were, to address the critical problem, in particular in some areas.
The problem is that we're losing this battle. It's getting worse instead of better. If you look at Southwest Virginia, the numbers now are actually like between one in every 100 to 200 citizens has hepatitis C in Southwest Virginia. And so this is a way where we can at least give the department the ability to have access and use this if we need it in a high-risk area.
And would it be fair to say that while the root disease, shall we say, is the drug addiction problem, we have a secondary symptom of that that's the other diseases, Hep C, things of that nature, because of the transmission through the dirty needles. And so as we know, one is going to take a little longer to address. We can at least use this to mitigate the secondary problems that are coming forward because of the drug issue.
I'll let Dr. Forlano answer any questions.
Any questions of the patron or anyone from the department?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
And I did push my button.
You did. I was getting to that.
So, Delegate O'Bannon or Dr. Lee, what is, this is predicated on, and as you posited, is this would only happen in those areas of the Commonwealth where a state of public health emergency is declared. But my sense or my understanding is there's nothing that would prohibit or prevent the commissioners from saying, this is a big enough public health issue that right now going forward, the entire state of Virginia we're going to declare a public health emergency as we did with naloxone and say that everywhere across the state we will now offer free sterile needles and syringes, and that's now the policy of Virginia, is that it's our way of dealing with the crisis. We're going to recognize that education hasn't worked, jails and criminal laws haven't worked, so the only thing we can do is really just help folks to prevent them from getting HIV and help me give me a comfort.
I'll actually take the privilege of answering that. If that happens on a statewide basis, I'll be back here in front of you next year. And I would say, too, that he addresses the process by which they go through defining where these areas are. So I think it's pretty tightly drawn, Scott. And it's certainly not my intention to do a statewide agency or not support that.
Now, Will, before I take the next question, just let the committee know if you see favorably on the underlying policy. This is a matter that corporations will need to see before they.
I apologize for not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you act on this, it does have to go upstairs.
Delegate Stock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend the patron for bringing this bill. There are a few things that we can do that dramatically impact public health in this type of epidemic that we're facing. This is one of those tools, and I think it's very important that we provide this to state to allow them to address this crisis.
Delegate Rob Bell.
Mr. Chairman, a series of questions.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Right, so we are studying, I don't know if this is the doctor, some of the other people that are here. I'm coming at this from the other side. So trying to think of a similar public situation where we are not providing, we provide lots of products to help ameliorate heroin, opioid, we have stocks, we have Naloxone. These are the things we've been talking about today. But this would be we're actually providing the needles that are being used to inject the heroin, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, we've seen the spike in deaths and health crises about heroin. This would certainly not address the deaths from fentanyl overdose or heroin. This is to address ancillary, but secondary. What's the medical term for what this addresses?
I think
HIV, what are they called?
infectious disease.
Okay. That arise from the use of the dirty needles.
I think there are multiple adverse health impacts of the opioid crisis. Infectious diseases are some of those. So you're correct that this program would address the infectious disease consequences.
Okay. What proportion of the deaths that we read about are caused by that versus the overdose of fentanyl heroin combination? Because we certainly, when we are describing the deaths that come from these opioid addiction issues, my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected, is that not just the majority, but the vast majority, the overwhelming majority is from that, not from these secondary impacts.
So over 9,000 cases of acute or chronic hepatitis C will be counted in 2016. And the number one risk factor for hepatitis C is injection drug use. So while it's not an immediate or acute death, it's a very serious and life-threatening disease. HIV, I would also argue, is in that category as well.
How many of the deaths are caused by will be fixed by this?
That's due to overdose. I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
we counted about 900 or 1,000.
How many of those deaths will be prevented by this clean needle exchange? This is being lumped into the fixing the heroin problem. When we talk about heroin problem, what people are mostly talking about, to my knowledge, is overdose. This may be a different issue. It may have some other good benefits, but it has nothing to do, in fact, if anything, we are providing the needles that people will use to kill themselves. Isn't it true?
No, Mr. Chair, Dr. Bell, Dr. Levine, the State Health Commissioner.
Yes, ma'am.
This is part of comprehensive harm reduction, is helping people stay alive and prevent complications while we get them into treatment. What we know about needle exchange programs is that people who enter those are five times more likely to actually get help for the underlying addiction. So the bottom line issue is we have an addiction problem, and the needle exchange is one tool, as Delegate Scali mentioned, to help get people the help that they need. So in other states that have passed this, we've seen that it's more likely you're going to get that help. But while you're getting that help, we also want to keep you from getting HIV or hepatitis, which is another incredible burden, not only to the individual, but to the community at large.
Further questions? Delegate Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you please provide the committee the cost of treating one hepatitis C patient? And then for those non-medical patients, what the cost would be, and then, where we're going.
So,
And as that increases, the cost of Tylenol.
on average, we're talking about, I think, $9,000 per case. 90,000, I'm sorry, 90,000. But one less zero. So $90,000 per case, and you heard we're approaching 9,000 known cases. That's an underestimate, we know. So there's an incredible burden in terms of attempting to try to treat all these people financially.
And further, I understand that's part of why it goes upstairs, because in fact, it may be a cost savings to the Commonwealth. They're not sure they need to dump that.
And I understand Delegate Bell's concern. This is now a proven public health option. The circumstances, as mentioned, where you identify these people who try to help get help.
Well, would it be fair to say, based on the experience in other states, it does not exacerbate the current drug addiction problem? It does help to ameliorate that, as well as the side effects and the other chronic conditions that result.
Mr. Chair.
Well, I've got Delegate Stolley in the queue. Is there anyone who has not spoken previously? Delegate Stolley, and then we'll be back to you, Delegate Bell, if you wish.
Mr. Chairman, I just add to the infectious disease argument there that as we're talking about overdoses and deaths from overdoses, as the individual who's using, if we're talking about infectious diseases, those individuals spread those infectious diseases, HIV and hepatitis C, to the general population. And so this provides a protection to the general population who are not users, as well as to the individual. So I think this is a very important public safety issue.
Dudley Bell, for a question or comment.
Yes, I mean, do we require them to be part of a drug treatment program to get the needle?
We don't have a program, but the programs that exist do not require that. And despite that, there's still greater opportunity and greater likelihood that they're going to enter treatment.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Further question?
We need to provide them with lots of things that they would then find attractive and encourage them as a part of the conversation to enter a drug treatment program. We can provide safer heroin, couldn't we? I mean,
This is a proven approach. So everything we do at the health department is based on evidence that's available. This is a proven approach. Our neighbors in North Carolina just passed similar legislation because it's a proven approach.
Any further questions or comments? Anyone in the audience to be heard on 2317? Mr. Johnson coming forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Scott Johnson, General Counsel for the Medical Society of Virginia. We fully support this. We took this to our board. We think it's a good policy and another tool in our arsenal to try to help our patients.
Any further public comment? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Brett Rawlings with Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association, similar to Mr. Johnson's comments, we look at this as an association that supports the commission.
Thank you, Brett. Good morning.
Members of the committee, Hunter Jamerson, Virginia Academy of Family Physicians. We fully support this measure. This does not solve our opioid crisis, but it certainly helps our public health crisis from getting worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to be heard on the matter? Any other questions of the patron? Committee members, what is your pleasure?
Move the report. Second.
Moved properly seconded to report House Bill 2317 and refer for appropriation. That's what they meant. I heard. Yeah. Discussion on the motion. If not, members, record your vote on the board on the motion to report and refer. Have all members voted? Declared to be recorded. The matter is reported and referred to appropriation 16 to 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Having no other patrons in the room, any bills that are on the docket, Dr. Price, that'll just go by till Tuesday. Full committee, just some general information as announced earlier. Dr. O'Bannon's sub 1 will be meeting Monday evening. They're also scheduled for Tuesday immediately upon adjournment of full. Delegate Bells will be meeting here in just a moment and scheduled to be meeting as well on Thursday of next week. Subcommittee 3 will be meeting Wednesday evening and probably the following Wednesday evening, and if needed, they will also have Tuesday of the last week a full committee before crossover. Committee members, are there other announcements that need to be shared? Thank you. We moved for a good plug this morning. You did a good job. Committee will rise.
Inspection. That's not true. We forgot that.